My name is Noar Lee Naggan, and I'm a painter and illustrator. I have always had shaky hands. They get gradually worse as I get older, but when my hand rests a pencil on the paper, the shaking is quite reduced, which is why in drawing I've always found confidence and calmness, two things I struggle with in other parts of my life. I only recently moved into making portraits as an exercise and in order to connect with people. But once I started, I suddenly remembered that really the first time it dawned on me that I was good at drawing was when I copied a portrait as a boy. I grew up in a very religious environment, but my mother always kept a lot of art books around the house. And I remember sitting in front of one specific portrait in one of the books and drawing what I was seeing with a pencil onto my paper. And when I was finished, I said to myself, okay, Noir, so you can definitely do that. And that confidence was a new feeling for me. I wanted to make a portrait of my husband Daniel for a long time, and I can't explain why he's holding a cauliflower specifically, but I felt there was something comical and touching in the way he's cradling the cauliflower in his hands. For me, there is some sort of mystery in the structure and shape of vegetables and fruits. They immediately connected my mind to dark fairy tales and folklore and comforts of childhood. I've always been in awe of works by Flemish masters of the Renaissance, so I arranged the composition in a way I imagined one of them would, a way that I find somehow claustrophobic and cozy at the same time.
Hello, my name is Lauren and I live in Glasgow. I first got into film photography, I guess, as most children do, with the wee disposable cameras, taking photographs of the videotape houses me and my sisters made for our dolls. Nowadays, I take photographs on both film and digital, and you get that sort of instant gratification with digital, but it wears off, whereas with film, it sort of builds the anticipation of whether you've just wasted £15 on your roll of film or not, which can make it a wee bit more exciting. When I was 16, my dad gave me his Minolta 7000, which he bought with the first wage from his first job in the 1980s, and I just fell in love with it. I can be quite shy with folk that I don't know, so most of my work is with people I do know because I feel more comfortable around them. I'm very grateful to have had two of my pictures shortlisted for the Scottish Portrait Award 2024. The first photograph is called Late Night at the Pizza Place, and it's of my boyfriend Kieran at a pizza place in Southside called Dario's. We'd already had an Indian that night, but clearly were quite peckish on the way home. When I showed Kieran's sister the picture, she said, it's as if he's invested all of his money in Pizza Box shares and they've suddenly plummeted, which I thought was brilliant. My granddad once said that the best pictures capture people in the middle of doing something. I think because it gives that sort of honesty of character in the furrowed brows and thoughtful faces, which I always try to capture in my own work, because I think it makes a much more interesting picture. And that's why I love this photo of Kieran. He looks scunner, and I think it just tells more of a story. My second photograph is called You Can Call Me Elvis, and it's of John Stevenson, a local Glaswegian and perhaps the city's answer to Elvis. You quite often see these folk in Glasgow who are just full of character, but more often than not, it's a brief moment and then you never see them again. So I was quite chuffed that when I walked past the next day, he was there again. When I came back, he wasn't on the usual patch of grass, so I looked around the corner and he was sat on the concrete. We had a wee chat and I asked him, are you a big fan of Elvis? And he said, aye, but I don't try to copy him. What you see is what you get. John told me he was a recovering alcoholic and has been off the bevy since 2008. He said he takes it a day at a time and he never thought that he would make it this far. But taking it day by day, he has, and it was a real pleasure to meet him. I love this photo for the interaction we had. He had such a youthful spirit, and I think him sitting in the rare but blaring sun, framing the Zimmer frame in the shade, really encapsulated the experience I had of him. He seems like a man who lives in the moment, a man worth speaking to if you happen to be passing by, and I think that's the main lesson I learned from John, and I'm very grateful for it.
When I'm painting people, I'm trying to get a balance between observing the person and finding something else in them. I don't often satisfy myself that I've managed to do that. But the wee painting that I have in the SPA this year takes me right back to a very specific time and feeling, and it captures something about how I felt that isn't clear cut enough to label, and that's what makes it a satisfying piece of work for me. I try to change how I work, and I'm definitely becoming less precious about everything as I get older. I'm quite happy now to destroy something that I put a lot of time into if I think it's helping me move forward. I've had the privilege of being selected for the SPA exhibition a few times now, and it's given me more confidence about what I do. It's probably encouraged me to change and experiment more, and ironically move beyond portrait painting into other work. But there's something about painting people specifically that always draws me back.
Hi, my name's Audrey Bizouerne. I'm a French artist based in Glasgow, practicing photography and music. I started taking my photography work seriously 4 years ago when I discovered analog photography. I became really passionate about it. The same year, I went back to study photography in uni, and I now just graduated from City of Glasgow College. I also work part-time in Gulabi, an independent film lab in the south side of Glasgow. I mainly work in portraiture and documentary photography. The photo that was selected for Scottish Portrait Awards was taken in my home studio in October 2022. My friend lent me his large format camera to experiment and learn. We tried together one day, then I practiced for a couple of nights using my neighbors as subjects. It made me want to create an inclusive typology of the people living around me, so I did an open call online to photograph as many people as I could during a long weekend. Around 30 people came to my flat in 3 days, friends, art connections, colleagues, friends of friends. I decided to only take one photo per person. I ended up having a really interesting selection of subjects from different backgrounds, genders, races and ages, mainly from my neighbourhood, which is the south side of Glasgow. What I really enjoyed was the slow process implied with large format photography. I wanted to only take one photo and focus on doing it right. People would only stay for about 10-15 minutes, but I wanted to really enjoy the moment and create a nice and unique memory with every one of them. The photo I chose to submit for the awards is the one of my classmate at the time, Lukas, who was interested in my project and offered to assist me one day. So this photo was taken during a break between people's visits. I liked that he chose to wear a white shirt because he wanted to look smart, and I loved his loose hair, so I asked him to let it down. I thought he looked really cool.
Hi, my name is Matt and I'm a photographer. I've been working in the creative industries for 20 years and I take photos of everything from fashion, commercials and everything in between. Today I'm going to show you the process that we went through to take the photo that you're going to see at the exhibition. So we're shooting on film, shooting on 5x7, and it's a really fun camera. So it's a new build body on a Schneider lens, and the thing that's nice about it is that these came out a couple of years ago, and they're basically it was a crowdfunding setup, but they're just super lightweight, really easy to transport around, and you get a pretty solid image out of them. There's something really satisfying about working in film as well, because you're kind of forced to slow down. I took the photos and now I'm going to develop them. So one of the things that I love about film is that kind of physicality of the fact that it exists and you actually have to do stuff with it. So what I'm doing now is I've put it into the dart bag and I'm just kind of going to remove the film from the holder, put it into the actual canister. This is the exact same process I went through with the young fathers. The young fathers image I particularly love because it isn't perfect. Technically it's out of focus, it's not exposed as well as you'd like it to be, but it captured the essence of the band really well. And I know the band, and I've worked with the band for years and years and years, and in another life I was actually their tour manager for a while. I really love their music and the idea of what they are, and I wanted to try and really encapsulate that within the image. You know, I speak to them and find out what they want, and shooting with this format I felt really helped to create the look and the feel that they wanted. In turn, it allowed me to kind of have a play with format that isn't used so much anymore. So I've got the developer in the tank, so 5 minutes, 20 degrees. Gentle agitation. I'm not quite sure if this is gentle or not, to be honest. I think that's maybe slightly more agitated than you need it to be, but this 5 minutes, and then we kind of rinse it, put a stop bath in, and then a fix, and then see how it turns out. So obviously we've slightly cheated here, but here's one that that's developed and it's come out. And as you can see, it's perfectly exposed and it's perfectly in focus, which is a novelty.
My name is Mark Yowd. I work in an old farmhouse near Kilmacombe, to the west of Glasgow.
I trained as a draftsman in a technical drawing office. Drawing comes naturally to me. It's the basis, the foundation of all my work. I didn't formally study art, but I taught myself art history and I taught myself to paint and then to sculpt. I started painting faces as a challenge to myself to achieve likeness whilst also making a good painting, to make art that stands up with all the history of the great portrait artists that have gone before. That's the challenge that I set myself every day. I'm delighted to have a painting accepted into the Scottish Portrait Awards 2024. My entry is of Anthony Burton. Tony is the Honorary Secretary of the Royal Philosophical Society of Glasgow, of which I am a member.
Members meet fortnightly to hear lectures given by internationally renowned experts on a range of topics, from history, the arts, science, economics and politics. These lectures are of great interest to me as my work is an investigation of the boundaries and intersections of scientific, spiritual and artistic understanding as it relates to the human portrait.
And it seems somehow right to start a portrait project depicting the members of the society and to begin with Tony. The painting itself is part of my fragment series. It is at the more traditional end of my work, but it still uses the restricted palette I developed in my abstract work. It is heavily textured. I want to bridge the gap between sculpture and painting, as if this was chiselled from rock or carved from hardwood. I want to bring to mind the processes of erosion and corrosion, the effect of time. This portrait is inseparable from the landscape. It's part of the greater machinery of the earth.
My name is Gillian Robertson and I'm a Scottish photographer now living in the United Arab Emirates. I studied photography at Napier University in the 1980s. Since moving to Ras Al Khaimah in 2015, I focused my energy on my practice. Street, travel and cultural photography and my empowering portraits both on location and in the studio. I also deliver workshops for the local community. I'm the resident artist and photography ambassador at the Design Gallery in Rack. This gives me a platform to promote my cultural series, The Women of Ras Al Khaimah, which has a unique story and one that hasn't been told before. Life is short and I'm living it to the full. I love capturing the essence of what it is to be human. For me, there's a real vulnerability in taking photos and having your portrait taken. But once we start and dance around each other, we settle down. I show the sitter how great they look and we relax, and through the art of connection, the magic happens. And then the sitter will show themselves and that's when we click. I met the wonderful Bill Bailey in Edinburgh early doors in 1987 and we became good friends. I was of course delighted when he approached me to take his portrait for Thoughtifier. 1 session for the tour poster, 2 with the instruments and then 3 with his animals. They say never work with animals, but the fun of capturing Rollo giving Bill an Elizabethan collar was just pure magic. I am over the moon that my photograph Rollo the Royal Python with Bill Bailey, London 2023 has been selected for the Scottish Portrait Awards.
I discovered this room above the pub, which was a decommissioned pub. So you'll walk in the room, and attached to the light switch is a CD player that's probably playing Meatloaf, because he loves Meatloaf. And the lights come on, and it's almost like a theatre. You just come into this red room.
Go, 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 go. Go, 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 go. Ah, you're in.
The photograph of Johnny is...
Adam, you didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, again.
My name is Blair Kemp. I'm from Scotland, and I mostly work with film photography. Mostly my practice revolves around my family, and it also kind of tends to go beyond that a little bit and exploring the people that I meet. And it's more intimate relationships that I come across in my life. For instance, the photograph that I've used for the Portrait Awards is a photo of Johnny, who's the handyman at my work. I see him every day. He's actually an artist himself. He decorates the pub. So the first time he took me up to the room, I was pretty in awe of the decorations, things like that. And he's also got these 2 pet ferrets that he always brings into the pub, and he always says that they bring people together, and I thought that was really nice. And I also thought that's a great match for the red room visually, and I tend to just plan the images out in my head before I actually take them. It's not so much... It is a documentary, but mostly it's like... It is constructed in some sense, and then I'll wait for a moment in between that's right, and it's authentic as well, and then I'll take the photograph. So the photograph of Johnny is part of a wider project, and it's titled The Moon and the Yew Tree, and it's inspired by a poem by Sylvia Plath, where she explores her relationship to her family. And I thought I wanted to kind of make my own spin on it in a way, and I was documenting my family home and the kind of what was left of my grandparents' house essentially after my grandpa had passed away, and he had been a hoarder. So I started to try and kind of breathe new meaning into the objects that I found in my grand's house, and then what I wanted to do was link my kind of roots with things that I've encountered as I've started to grow up and leave home and things like that. So it's called The Moon and the Yew Tree because the moon is like the symbol for the fantasy, and then the yew tree is a symbol for family and the roots, because there is an actual physical yew tree that hangs over my grandparents' house.
I'm honoured to have been selected for the Scottish Portraits Award this year, and this etching is my submission. The sitter is my sister-in-law Annie, and it comes from a bigger series entitled Start Where You Are. There are 5 similar portraits, all drawn from people I live alongside, and each portrait is paired, like this, with a painting. When I was drawing my sister-in-law, and within that meditative flow, I was surprised to experience a very immersive image of cherry blossom falling onto still water. You can see the trace of pink brush marks that represent the blossom falling. They get printed first, before the drawing plate. Curiosity over this glimpse landscape was why I made the next 4 portraits, and why I then extended each work into the abstract paintings. My question was, what was this thing that emerged in the slow time and exchange space between me and my sitters? How could I express that? How could I give that back as a gift to the sitter? If you get to the Scottish Portrait Award exhibition, you'll stand with this etching of Annie. And if you can connect and pause, you'll open your own inner dialogue with what you find there. And that's an amazing thing too, isn't it? The varied relationships, the narratives that an image has the capacity to be part of or stand in for over time.
I made this painting on a trip to India. India is a feast for the senses, and I stayed in a hotel in Jodhpur, and there was a man working on the door and he looked incredible, and I thought I have to paint him. So I painted him mostly on a train trip a week after the Jaipur hotel. The train was shaky, very noisy, and I just completed a course on realistic painting. And I tried to paint them as realistically as possible and get lots of details in there, which was a bit tricky on the train, but hopefully I succeeded.
Hello, my name is Susan Mains and I'm delighted to be included in the Scottish Portrait Awards. My approach to photography in many ways has been quite an informal one. I usually will chat to people that could be people I know, people in my family, perhaps it's people that I've been working with. And in the case of the picture that was selected, Peter and Loretta at the Aero Cafe, this was people that I'd come to know by visiting their lovely cafe and getting amazing cups of coffee, and I was just really struck by the ambience of the place and how much work they'd put into it and how they connected with local people that came by. And so we got chatting and I asked if they would be happy with me sort of taking some photographs and documenting the place, and I felt that it was also important to take pictures of them in a place that meant a lot to them and had for many generations of their families. So this was something that had kind of incorporated, including elements of the cafe and the interior decor, but also I wanted to have kind of a mix of formal and informal photographs with them as well to show sort of different aspects of the cafe. Included in that was paying attention to light, and light is something that I've paid attention to in my different photographs, to highlight particular features. I think that, this has really given me a chance to explore how we connect with people and how we tell stories through photography, and I hope that this is something that has given Peter and Loretta a chance to also share the Aero Cafe with a wider audience, and I really appreciate their generosity in letting me be a part of that.
Over the past 2 years, I've been working mainly in drawing, using charcoal and graphite on paper. These drawings were initially influenced by the landscape and the rural areas that surround where I live. This collection of drawings subsequently led to and inspired a series of animated movies. Although initially influenced by the wonderful animations of the artist William Kentridge, I think my subsequent works have more individual qualities that better represent my own ideas and interests. During the making of the second animated movie, I had an idea to develop a work that investigated my relationship with my twin brother Martin. To do this, I started to work on self-portraits, and by carefully manipulating facial features and dimensions, I was able to construct the image of my brother. Firstly, I imagined a collection of episodes with dialogue representing a set of stories about growing up together. After developing the work and making the drawings, I shelved this idea. I reused the portraits and fashioned a set of self-portraits wearing a variety of clothes and accessories to represent possible future professions and circumstances.
I'm Mark Mulholland, and these are my 2 shortlisted entries for the Scottish Portrait Awards 2024. Benedict is a recent portrait commission, so I've decided to ask my clients about some of their thoughts on the creative process.
The best way I've been able to sum it up, at least myself, was actually in the final painting, and it was these kind of 2 levels of reality in the same painting, the stylized kind of almost pop art in Malta at the top out the windows, and then this much more realistic, impressionistic view inside the flat. That to me is why I wanted a representation of Benedict that wasn't a photograph, because I didn't want something that portrayed reality.
You can have something that purely depicts a person's face and what they look like at that point in their life, or you can look to something that's more representative of where they have been and maybe where they're going and sort of their history, family history. They're inspired by sort of old Tudor portraiture, which took a sort of biographical approach. You can see it in this portrait with the presence of certain artifacts and the background, things like that. I think that's what we were wanting to communicate, something beyond just an appearance of a person, but a sort of a riddle hidden within the painting of what that person is.
My shortlisted portrait of John Byrne and this film clip is my way of remembering and celebrating my years spent in his company. 6th of August 2013. Dear John, I've been meaning to ask you for a few weeks now. After your jam session with Michelangelo, I found inspiration from the experience and was wondering if you would allow me to paint you in a composition. I'm planning to use a few photos I took on the day. I wish to enter the piece in next year's BP Portrait Award. Please let me know what you think. Thanks, Mark. In subsequent years, our friendship strengthened. I would visit his studio, where we would put the world to rights and create portraits of one another. The Strange Case of Billy's Banjo recounts one of these studio visits back in 2017. I created this after John's death in December last year. The portrait mirrors my 2013 painting and was my way of connecting with John from this side of mortality. John is facing his 1970s depiction of Billy Connolly and to his past, whilst at his back sits the new version of the Lost panel. His painting style was noticeably different in the two panels, which were separated by 40-odd years, and John's ubiquitous pose with legs crossed and roll-up in mouth.
My name's Ralph Anderson, and this is my painting Self-Portrait in a Hawaiian Shirt for the 2024 Scottish Portrait Award. The source imagery was actually my passport photo. I needed to get a new passport, and this was the first time where I was taking the photo myself, so it was just against my bathroom door, and just quite like the matter of factness of it, the straight on photo, what you have to do for a passport photo, actually worked quite well for a painting, because it's just a figure looking straight at the viewer. I had nothing else in between. Initially, this painting was for an exhibition of mine, which is going to be in London this October. It's the part of a new body of work where I'm weaving representational imagery through with abstraction and building up these layers of paint, and then by the end of it, I'll then carefully sand back the whole painting to reveal traces, echoes, or just the remnants of the image that was previously there. Initially, I was just using landscapes when I first came up with this process. I just was using landscape photos I had to hand and thought I should try this with a portrait, and so this is when I did my self-portrait.
My name is Dylan Nardini, and I am a photographer from South Lanarkshire. I am predominantly a landscape photographer, although I have a deep love of portraiture and capturing people, especially in their environment. The image Gypsy was part of an ongoing personal project, capturing my maturing family and all the changes that entails, from the youngest to the oldest. This series is shot on film and predominantly on Kodak Tri-X 400. When shooting portraits, natural light is my preferred source, no doubt stemming from my work and my many hours spent in the ever-changing light and environment of the Scottish landscape. Gypsy is my eldest daughter of two. She has recently undergone surgery to rectify severe double scoliosis of her spine. She has developed this over the last 12 to 18 months. At 15 years old, This worry and wait for surgery has taken its toll, as I noticed more and more moments of quiet contemplation from her. For the first time, a degree of worry and perhaps ageing could be seen behind those beautiful, hypnotic eyes. As I make this video, Gypsy is currently 2 weeks into her recovery from surgery, and on the whole is coping well with everything. I'm absolutely thrilled this image has made it to the exhibition, and I look forward to seeing it surrounded by amazing portraits and all with their own individual stories.